Everybody is dealing with something. And that's really why I want to share these stories, because the more stories we tell, the more people can relate to them, and hopefully we can help, get through their own struggle.
Yeah, no, it's super simple to do a podcast. You basically just need a couple of microphones and sit down and talk for a little while.
Big forgiveness equals big love.
We're constantly publishing new content. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.
All right, you guys, welcome to the Tattoos of My Soul podcast. Today, I am happy to have Stephanie Fischer as my guest. Stephanie is a single mom. She's a homeschooler. She's also certified in holistic health. So we're in the same kind of niche, same kind of genre. That's very cool. She used to be a hairstylist before the pandemic, and she's also in the middle of writing a book to inspire people who have struggled or are struggling with chronic health issues and addiction. And she's hoping to inspire people to turn to God and show people that God can turn anything around, which I love that. That sounds very familiar to me.
Yeah.
I think that you and I definitely have that in common. And so she is here today to share her story, and we're going to talk about a topic that honestly we all like to avoid. Yeah, when we talked on the phone, I was like, "Ooh, that's a good one." So we're going to be talking about unforgiveness, or to forgive, and how difficult that can be. So Stephanie, I want to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you for taking time to join me. Yeah, and so you have a great story, and I'm just going to kind of let you tell your story to kick the podcast off, so people kind of know your background and where you've been in life. So tell us
first
about
of all,
that.
Thank you for having me today and giving me the opportunity to share this with other people.
Yeah,
I just really appreciate that. The topic I wanted to talk about was unforgiveness, and just because it's a hard topic, and it's been a struggling block in my life personally that I've struggled with, and I want people to know that if you can forgive, if you can bring yourself to forgive, that God can really work through your life and turn it around. Unforgiveness can affect us negatively. It can show up in our lives, adding to more trauma. And by not forgiving other people, it hinders our ability to produce the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So for those of you who may be listening who don't know, the fruit of the Spirit is a list of characteristics that we develop as Christ followers in our relationship with Him. It's not anything that we can do on our own, but it develops over time through following God. And those attributes are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness. And I didn't really understand before that we couldn't develop those if we're not willing to forgive others. Part of developing the fruit is forgiving. So I really like the verse Matthew 6:14-15. It says, "For if you forgive men for their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men for their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive you for yours." So I think that's something important that we all need to remember. For me, a lot of that unforgiveness in my life has stemmed from being a single mom and not being able to forgive my son's father for walking out on us and leaving us.
Yeah.
And really, that has just turned into bitterness. And bitterness can really just rot the soul. A lot of people don't understand that, but it can rot you to your core. And it's a poison that people don't think about. And I mean, it's so hard when we feel like we've been wronged, somebody's done something against us. Our flesh doesn't want to forgive. We want to hold on because we think there's some kind of power in that. Or we just might struggle with letting go of it. But the real power that I've come to find out is in letting go of it and forgiving, because then we're able to actually make room in our hearts for love. Unforgiveness can turn into bitterness, which that bitterness can show up in ways in our lives, like it can show up as physical sickness and make us physically sick. It can make us mentally sick. You have mental health issues, depression, anxiety, social isolation.
Oh, yeah.
And it also affects spiritual health, too.
For sure.
In Luke 7:47 through 48, it says, "Therefore I say to you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom is forgiven, the same loves little." So what I took from that is big forgiveness equals big love. Forgiving opens the heart to be able to love. And maybe it's not, the same person that's wronged us, but it's opening our heart up to love our families better, love our community better, love new friends better. It just opens that heart up, versus when we're so focused on who's wronged us, our whole attention and focus really comes in on that and not letting go of that. And so it's so important to let go of that. And it doesn't mean forgetting it. Like I've been in terrible abusive relationships, and there's no way that I'm ever going to forget that abuse from those partners. But I can ask God to help me to forgive them, and I don't have to think about it anymore. I can move on from the trauma. I can close that chapter of my life and move forward.
Yeah, I think that's really solid advice. I think for the person who's listening, that maybe they're in a space of their life where there is someone let's face it, we probably all have someone, right? To forgive, something that's happened in our life that's really difficult. I think in general terms, it's often easy to think and say, I really do need to forgive. Like, I know that's the right thing to do. Like, I know that walking around angry and bitter or holding on to something from the past is not in my best interest. But actually doing that, actually releasing that can be a pretty huge gap. So what do you say to the person who says, how do I even begin that process? Like, I'm so full of anger, bitterness, sadness, whatever those emotions are. And we know how strong emotions are. How does someone even begin that process of taking a step towards forgiveness? Because I really think it's a process. Do you agree?
I agree, Molly. I honestly think the very first step begins with asking Christ for that help. Saying a prayer and asking for God's help, because there's so many things in my life personally that I would not have been able to do on my own without him. And so if it's beyond us, and typically when we have someone we need to forgive like that, it is beyond us. We do need to ask for his help. And he's more than willing to help us and meet us where we're at. And that's the amazing thing. So just opening ourselves up to him and letting him work in our life. I've asked him so many times, please use me as a vessel for your work. I want to be able to be used by him. And so he's working wonders in my life. I've battled bad relationships where I've been unequally yoked with people, and get, I've lived a past life of sin, and I grew up in the church. I was saved at 7 years old, and I grew up in the church, but I got involved in the party lifestyle. I experimented with drugs, and I'm like, if he can turn my life around, he can turn anybody's life around. And anybody's life is redeemable by him. It really is. For sure. So I would say obedience is also important. You asked me, in the step of forgiveness, being obedient to the Lord is so important. And I think it's something that as Christians we don't think a lot about, being obedient to him, because our flesh desires to live one way, but we're supposed to live in spirit.
Well, we typically don't like that word obedient, like it's almost like, I don't want to be like reprimanded. I'm not a child, like we want to push against that. But there is such power in what you're saying when we, and obedience to me looks like, if I think of the process of forgiveness, because my own walk with forgiveness, has been challenging to say the least, with certain things in my life. And I think, the things that I've needed to forgive, it's not a one and done. It comes up. You think you've done it. You think you've done the work. It's like, okay, that's behind me. And then all of a sudden something triggers you, activates that feeling in you. And you're like, man, I thought that was behind me. I thought I had done that. And it comes up again. And the obedience looks like surrendering again in that moment, saying, okay, God, here's another layer that I need to work on.
Yes,
and I'm bringing this to you again, and I need you to step in again, and you just keep doing that process. And I feel like it's kind of like a radio dial that gets turned down. It was super loud in the beginning, and then the more that you do that over and over and over again, it just keeps getting quieter and quieter. And I think about things in my life, like I still have events that absolutely, activate things within me, but as I've continued to work and be consistent and be obedient and spend my daily time with God, it's gotten turned down. It's not as loud as it used to be, And I think it's just that continual process.
I love that, because that's, they always say that healing isn't linear, healing, there's like all kinds of paths, up and down, and so it's not just like a straight line to healing.
Yeah, for sure.
So
and I think
I really agree with that.
Yeah, that's like the beautiful part to me, because I think that through our obedience, we also realize how dependent we need to be on God. Like you said, it's most of the time the things that we need to forgive are beyond us. And I heard a podcast recently where they were talking about, a true change is not behavior modification, it's spiritual transformation, It is. And that's really what takes place within us as we age and as we continue on this path with Christ. Hopefully we're maturing and evolving and becoming less of us and more like him. That's the ultimate goal, right?
That is the ultimate goal, to become more like him. And I agree with so much of what you said. It's not something that happens overnight. Like I said, I grew up, I got saved. I chose to invite Christ into my life at 7 years old. I was on fire for him. This little girl just on fire for the Lord. And, just so many things in my life, my upbringing. I had an alcoholic stepfather. And so I had some childhood trauma, which I think that can manifest too in decisions that we make further along in our life. And then I know that I make poor decisions in partners, and so that trauma can really just sit and, it's something I've had to work through as an adult woman, to forgive him for the way that he treated my mother, for the way that, my upbringing. And like I said, anybody's life, no matter what you've been through in childhood or what you go through in life, is redeemable by the Lord. And again, back to obedience. After my second son, I've had 4 years of celibacy. And so that's just like, I've recommitted myself to the Lord in that way, because I want to be, purified through him, and I want him to work in my life, and I don't want to live the old sinful life, I want to make new choices. So he's really been working through that obedience and through that recommitment. And I'm hoping, one day that I will end up married to a great husband who will be a wonderful father to my kids.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. And I love how you're just, you're practicing your faith in your daily actions. You're carrying it out in what you do and how you live,
It's
and I
so
think that
important.
that's so good. Yeah. You, when we first spoke, you described yourself as, in your younger years, as a lukewarm Christian.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yes.
does that look like? What do you mean by that?
So, and a lot of Christians, I've been in women's groups. Some of them get offended by the term, but I think it's something we all really need to face, that maybe we could have been there. I know that I have been many of times there in my own faith. And being a lukewarm Christian means that you're like straddling that fence post, You're not really full on with your commitment, or maybe you once were, but you backslid and you're dabbling in other things, like you're really becoming of the world instead of Christ. And that changes our spirit. It changes our heart posture. It changes the fruit we produce. It changes everything about us. And for me, I really got involved with. I started getting involved in the self-help section, and I don't think there's anything wrong with certain self-help books, but I really got involved in new age kind of stuff. I was making a lot of new friends that were partying, experimenting with psychedelics and different things like that. And I was really opening myself up to things that now I know that I need to stay away from. But I opened myself up to a lot of new people, and I thought they, were loving, and I was like, I can't believe that but God started to really lift the veil on that and show me what was underneath it all. And I was blinded for so long by it. I was blinded by new age practices. I was blinded by, the new age community, the party community. And so a lot of being lukewarm was I just wasn't all in for Christ. I wasn't sold out. My heart wasn't all in for Christ. And I was welcoming all these other things into my life that were actually taking me further and further away from Him instead of closer. And there was no happiness coming from it, no long-term happiness, no long-term fulfillment, only brokenness, broken relationships, and I realized, I don't want that to be in my kids' lives. I want my kids, I don't want my kids to see that, me be that kind of mom. So that was really just, not last year, but the January before, I got rebaptized at my church, because I had been baptized as a child, but I really just wanted to do it again. And I have just been very vocal and public about my relationship with Jesus and what He's done for my life, instead of hiding. I don't want to hide anymore. There's no reason why to hide for somebody who died for me. He went up on that cross for us, and so I don't want to hide my love for Him anymore.
I got rebaptized as well. Let's see, it was, I think it was in 2021. I did. Okay. I decided I wanted to do. It was it was the same kind of thing. It was like, it was right after a significant trauma in 2020 that my husband and I went through, and I just had that year, right after that was so. I hated it at the time, but now I look back and I'm like, man, that was a beautiful process, because I went to my lowest low and then ended up, a few months later doing what you just, hey, I want to rededicate myself. Yep. And I think what happened for me is I realized that situation, that really traumatic situation. So for anybody who's listening that doesn't know, my husband and I were involved in a really violent shooting in the driveway of our home, and that situation, and processing that, and like, how do you process that, and trying to deal with that, and then going a lot of different routes to try and numb, self-medicating and all kinds of things, that just trying to distracting myself, whatever. And none of that worked. It actually made everything worse.
Yeah.
And then I came to the point where I realized, like, this is how much I need Christ. Like, I can't, like you said, this is beyond me. Okay. I have to have someone that can help me carry this load. And when I started making that realization, my relationship with God shifted and came into a whole new space like it had never been before, because I, too, grew up going to church, and I was raised Catholic, and, You know, I was raised in a home where we talked about God and Jesus, and that was a part of my life. But I never had that personal relationship with him like I do now until I suffered greatly. And that was what led me to say, you know what, I too, I want to be very vocal about who has saved me, why I'm still standing, why I can come out stronger on the other side of this. 100% agree.
Yeah.
And I love that part of God, of what he can do, how he can take something so ugly and awful within us and turn it for something good, you know, something beautiful.
That's like when people say, you know, he'll use you at your lowest point and he'll come in. And I think for a lot of people, they do hit, I mean, I know that I'm one of them. I hit rock bottom, and he just is able to use you in your most broken state, you know?
For sure. I think too, like, you know, thinking about the lukewarm, even now, I can become lukewarm. You know, we think like, oh, well, if you've committed to Christ and you know, this is your life and you've given your life to him,
done.
Then it's we're good. And I have to really check in with myself sometimes, because I will notice that I start to kind of drift a little bit, and maybe I'm not as consistent in spending my time with him. I'm not getting in, you know, my Bible as much, or doing my time each day. And I can become lukewarm, and when I'm in that place, just the sense of peace and the sense of contentment and the sense of, like, you know, even if the outside world is crazy, I'm okay. That all really diminishes if I'm not spending that regular time, and if I do become more lukewarm, you know?
Yes,
and
it does.
The older I get, I just realize, like, I gotta be consistent. Like, that makes such a difference for me, just that consistent time.
I agree with you. I have to be consistent too, but I also have to know we're human, we're imperfect.
For sure.
We have to already know and accept that we're going to mess up.
Yeah.
But it doesn't give us a free pass to do it. That's not what I'm saying. But we just have to know that it's going to happen, and try not to, like, punish ourselves when we don't follow through, because I think that's a big thing. You can kind of, like, harp and punish yourself, like you didn't get the time in, or, you know, you didn't get your morning Bible study in, but just know that it's okay and move past it and keep trying.
Yes.
It's a matter of like, keep showing up, keep trying, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, 100%. I would say, even if you, like, because I don't always get it in every single day, but, like, even if I can just get 5 minutes, you know, of like going out and taking a walk and a little prayer, or just I love the Holy Bible app, because it makes things so easy.
The YouVersion. Yeah,
yes,
that's great.
I love it. It's so good.
I love it too.
Yes.
That was one of the biggest gifts in my life. During the pandemic, I was in that thing like almost every day, and I feel like that had a big part. They have the daily verse, you know, and they have someone do a video, and that just kept getting me closer and closer.
I agree. It's so good. Yeah. If anybody that's listening who's not tried the Holy Bible app, you definitely need to. It's such a good resource, such a good tool. Talk to me a little bit about how unforgiveness, you said that it can play a part in our health, you know, and you are certified in holistic health. So you can definitely speak to that. How do you see, you know, we think, oh, I got to forgive because that's what God wants me to do, and, you know, that's just what I'm supposed to do. But we also need to do it, like, for our own physical health. Speak to that a little bit.
So, you know, if we're harboring this unforgiveness in our life, we're causing a lot of stress and tension, and maybe we're not, you know, always thinking about it. Maybe we're not always understanding that that's causing anxiety and depression for us. But it's just like anything, you know, when we have that unforgiveness, it can manifest and show up as a physical sickness. So maybe we've got, holding on to that is causing physical sickness in our life. So letting go of that in our life is going to lighten our load, not just in the sense that that's what God wants us to do, but in the sense that it's what's healthy for us. And our health, I think that people will see their health progressively get better. I'm somebody who's battled chronic illness myself. I've been through a lot of things, and so healing that trauma, like I said, it's not all my doing. God has had a lot to play in that, but healing that trauma has caused me to get a newfound joy in my health. Like my whole health routine is different now than it used to be when, I was partying, and I'm not putting bad things into my body anymore. I'm not poisoning my body with alcohol anymore. I'm making sure I'm getting out on walks with my kids and really just getting the sun on my body. I'm eating better. I feel better. And so that's a huge part of our journey with God is taking care of our bodies. Our bodies are temples.
Yeah, agree. Couldn't agree more. I read a statistic one time, and don't quote me on this exactly, but it was like 5 minutes of anger. If you're angry for 5 minutes, I think it suppresses your immune system for 3 hours. Which is crazy. Like, I mean,
anger does suppress. I don't know the statistics of it, but yes, it does. Anger has a huge part to play on our immune system, because also anger activates the frontal lobe of the brain. So when that frontal lobe is activated, that's the fear and the anxiety. And so our body can, when we're in that constant state of anger, this lobe is activated all the time, and we're making ourselves sick.
Yeah, absolutely. Like too much cortisol, too much inflammation. Inflammation leads to disease. Yeah, I mean, we could just digestive issues, lack of sleep.
We could go on.
I mean, we could just go on and on and on. So why you should not be walking around angry. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and well, and it's just. I was going to say, it doesn't make, if you say, I want to get healthier, it's got to be lumped in there, like the forgiveness. And as much as we don't want to do it, as much as we want to, and I'll be the first to say, like, it's hard work. Like it's, I don't know that I've 100% done everything that I need to do in that, arena. I'm sure I haven't. There's still work to be done.
I think continuously work.
If you are actively taking steps, I think that's the biggest part, to acknowledge, this is still there, no matter if it's from childhood or for whatever it's from, and I'm going to actively take steps to release it. And it's not about the other person. It's for you. It's about you, for your own health. It's for your own well-being,
Yes, I think that's so good, Molly, because I think a lot of times people can think that the forgiveness is all about the other person.
It's not.
And not realizing that when we harbor resentment and anger, it actually affects us more than the other person.
Yes.
Because it's inside of our body. It's inside of our mind and everything, and it's affecting us. And it affects how we treat our family, and how we respond to our kids, how we respond to, our loved ones. It affects everything, every aspect of our life. Have you ever had anybody talk about forgiveness on the show?
Not a whole lot. And I think that's probably because it's the topic that we all want to just naturally avoid. It's the hard work to do, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad that we got to talk about that today.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just end on this note. I think you started with fruits of the Spirit. And as you were listing them, I think it's really interesting that forgiveness is not one of the fruits of the Spirit. But if you think about it. Yeah, you think about everything that is. So you've got love and joy and patience, self-control, like those are all, it's like the recipe for forgiveness. It's like all the things that are required in order to forgive.
Yeah, and if you notice, they're all like positive things: gentleness, faithfulness, goodness, kindness. And I don't know what scripture it is in the Bible, but I was doing some research on it, and I was wondering, can we still develop these fruits of the spirits without forgiving somebody? And no, we cannot. In order to develop all of the fruits of the Spirit, we have to be able to forgive.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
crucial and it's integral that we are able to forgive others, because think of a tree that is just dead and rotting. It's not going to produce fruit. It's barren. And so if we want to be that fruitful tree and be able to give back and be full of life, we've got to be able to forgive.
Makes total sense. One last question. I thought that was my last question, but one last question. Tell me about your book. Tell me the basis of your book.
So the basis of my book is, I'm going to be calling it The Homecoming. And the basis of it is, I'm really going to be giving my testimony, my story of what I have been through in life in detail, with addiction and, having premarital sex and not waiting until marriage to be with somebody, and how that's played out in single motherhood, and how it has just been, it's been hard. And I can understand now why God intends for women to be married when they have children, because he never intended it to be this hard on a woman. And I just want to share my story. It helps with, somebody else has a loved one or a child that's struggling with addiction, that God can redeem anybody's life. He can bring anybody home. He can renew and ignite, a redeeming purpose in everybody.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's going to help a ton of people. So many people are going to relate to that. I mean, I'm relating to a lot of things you're saying. I think, we all have walked in certain seasons of our life when we've not been close to God. We've not, made the best choices. But I think, if we can continue just to put one foot in front of the other and just say, that's the past, and I am choosing differently now, and continue to surrender and continue to just be consistent in our time with him. I think that can make a huge difference in our life. And I think that your book, talking about how you struggled and now how it's completely different for you. I mean, I'm sure you still have your struggles, but it's going to help.
I do.
Yeah, encourage a lot of people.
Thank you. And one thing I want people to understand, I think a lot of people get wrong who maybe don't know Jesus and don't have that relationship with him, is Christians are not perfect people. I'm not here to say I'm perfect, and I need God because I'm broken. I need God because I'm not perfect, because I am broken. And so a lot of people actually get that backwards. The Christians need the Lord because they're some of the most broken people, and they need God's healing. They need God's healing. They need God's love. They need his mercy and his grace,
Yeah. That's, I actually hope that people, their view of me is that I have been a very broken person, and the only reason that I have been able to work through that is because of God. I hope no one, if I ever put off the persona that I'm some perfect person, then I'm not doing a good job of communicating my story, because that is definitely not the case. So I agree 100%. Okay, so when's your book going to be out? When's it going to be released?
So I don't have a projected release date, but if people want to I keep posting about it and updating it on my social media. People can find me on Instagram at My Holistic Roots. I also have a YouTube channel. I'm not super active on that, but that's also My Holistic Roots. And I will post updates more and more as the release continues to get closer.
Awesome. But we can follow you on those two channels. That's great.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate your time so much. I appreciate you being willing to just share your story and your love for God. And I think it's great, and I'm excited to read your book. So keep working on it. Let me know when it's out.
All right. Thanks for having me, Molly.
Thank you.
We're constantly publishing new content. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell